babe, wanna leave this town. I'm saying, love her if you wanna go, I'm down. 'Cause darling, we'll make a bigger thing. Wanna go, we'll make babe, wanna leave this town. I'm saying, love her if you wanna go, I'm down. Wanna go, darling, we'll make a bigger thing. We'll make wanna go, wanna go, we'll make
Good afternoon to this online Zoom event that we organize, linked to the project MyHubs. MyHubs, that's a one-stop shop on inclusion practices, tools, resources, and methods for the pedagogical staff at formal, non-formal educational institutions. In short, we call it MyHubs. I will be your host this afternoon. My name is Karel van Isakker. And I'm representing the Belgian partner in this project. So first of all, once again, welcome. There are some practicalities that everyone should be aware of. During the presentation, except for the speakers, all participants are kindly asked to mute themselves. If you hear some noise, we may mute, or we may mute you, in fact. All presentations will be presented in English. If you have any questions, please post them during each presentation in the chat functionality. We will then select from them for the Q&A that will be done at the end of each presentation. So you have a question, put it in chat, and then we will sort through those questions. Every participant in this online event will receive afterwards access to all the presentations and also will receive a certificate of virtual attendance. For your information, and respecting also the privacy guidelines, the entire Zoom session will be recorded and is being broadcasted as we speak via YouTube, and later on will be hosted also on the project Facebook page. That also means this recording will be public, so you will have easily access to it afterwards and you will be able to share it with other parties that may be interested in the presentation that will be shown. Throughout the session, we also will make screenshots of participants. This is an obligation that is required from the European Commission. So this information stays within our company and is just shared with the administrative services of the Commission. So this is not used for any other purpose. You will also receive afterwards from us an email where we will ask you to give some feedback on this online event. So our project, MyHubs, is funded under the Erasmus Plus program of the European Commission. It's a Key Action 3 project, and it focuses on social inclusion, common values, and very specifically on the contribution in the field of education, training, and youth. It is a 3-year project. We started end of January 2019, and we are going to continue till the end of January 2022. You can find there also the information about the project website. The partners that are involved in this project are from Latvia, the coordinator, the University of Latvia, from Belgium, PhoenixKM, from Bulgaria, Sofia University, St. Clement Oritsky, and also Marie Curie Association MCA, and then from Cyprus, also EuroC Innovations. The first introduction you have received from me, so I took the liberty for every speaker to give a very short overview, who they are, also with a nice picture of everyone. So I am the CEO of PhoenixKM BV from Belgium, and the next speaker who will introduce the main project presentation is from the University of Latvia. She's Professor Linda Daniela. She's equally the Dean of the Faculty of Education, Psychology and Art, and is Director of the Master Study Program, Technological Innovations and Design for Education. So I give the floor now to Linda so that you can share your presentation.
Thank you, Karel. So let's try to start sharing screen. No. Okay, so is my presentation. Just a moment. I suppose that you don't see the full screen.
We see your PowerPoint, in fact. We don't see the full screen. But it is visible if you want to present like that.
No, just a moment. It's not so quick as we wish. The last button I should press.
We can see your presentation in that.
But don't you see the next slide as well?
Yes, we see that as well.
So I will push one more button and then it will be solved.
Okay.
Okay. So thank you, Karel, for introduction. And as Karel was saying, I represent University of Latvia, but before I start, a short introduction about the project, about activities we planned and activities we almost done. Everything. I would like to thank Karel and also other partners who participated in that project. I think we had a good collaboration and we did quite a good work. And my presentation will be about project, as I said, and a few ideas on how we can look on inclusive materials. So let's start and how we think about inclusive education. We put it all together. We think about people with special needs. We think about socio-economical status of people. We think about cultural diversity, and we also take in mind gender differences, which also sometimes play a role. And we have to look at this picture as all these aspects influence each other, and we have to take in mind not only one of them, but also all aspects, and they can influence how people and students feel and how they can reach some services, how they can learn, and how they can develop knowledge. And in that sense, I'm going next slide, and our main goal was to prepare a learning hub with materials, inclusive education materials, and why we need to do that, to provide access to knowledge, to support knowledge improvement, to evaluate knowledge, and to use knowledge, and put all it together. We make some kind of infrastructure, how we can look on these materials, and I will try to go in each of these aspects a bit deeper in and explain what I was thinking about those aspects here. So if we are talking about access to knowledge, and we look at inclusive materials from the point of view that these are solutions which ensure that particular knowledge is accessible, and in a situation when, for example, student has some kind of special needs or specific situation, these materials can help to provide this knowledge and make this knowledge accessible. And one, knowledge improvement. And as we all know that sometimes all the materials are quite good materials, but they are not working well for particular student or for particular group of students. And here we can think about materials which support better learning outcomes and provide this access to knowledge and support better learning outcomes, and in that way support knowledge development. Next group would be knowledge evaluation, and here are materials or solutions to assess and evaluate knowledge. And for example, if a student can't write and we can't assess and evaluate the knowledge in a traditional way, these inclusive materials can give us opportunity to assess this knowledge and assess it in a different way as it was in traditional settings and traditional educational environment. And last one here in this structure is knowledge use. And here we can think about materials which supports to use knowledge learned, not only take in their, I don't know, in their knowledge amount and knowledge base, but also use this knowledge in particular settings, in particular learning environment, or maybe tests, or maybe do some work, some tasks. So what I'm trying to say is that not all the materials can be in the same group. For example, if this material is aimed to evaluate knowledge, maybe the same material is not as good for providing better learning outcomes or to provide knowledge accessibility. It's just for evaluating the students' knowledge. And if we are looking on materials from different angles, we can choose the best materials for our particular situation, for our particular student or particular problem solving. And what we have agreed on during the project preparation, we agreed to collect and systematize and categorize good practices results, and partners worked to collect resources and categorize them based on predefined wizard-style logical framework. There was customization by each partner of the content based on national requirements, circumstances, and cultural differences. Collection of the materials on the MyHub portal. I will show later on the links, but I suppose that also other partners will talk about this information. We have tested inclusive learning resources in our partner countries for a period of 2 semesters. To be sure that it's a valuable resource, we were gathering impact from the implementation of inclusive learning resources based on impact grade scale. And also, it should be mentioned that it was ongoing process of collection of other appropriated inclusive learning resources, methods, tools, and practice. And we also worked a lot to disseminate material, disseminate our project results on national and European level, and this ongoing exploitation campaign also on national and European level. But all these steps were divided in work packages, and this scheme is already in use from the very beginning of the project. So we had work package 1 for administrative and financial management, but I will go through all these work packages and will show you activities which we have planned in this project, and we already have done a lot of activities. Almost everything is done, and even more than planned is done. And I will explain. So first one is maybe boring for you, because project administrative and financial management is it's what should be done, but of course, we prepared and signed grant agreement. We signed bilateral agreements and all other managemental issues were prepared and to ensure that project is developed and also monitored for its smooth realization. And after each 6 months, we reported on project results. But as I said, it's maybe most boring place about administrative issues. And next one was quality assurance, a package, working package, and activities. What were done here was production and implementation of quality assurance strategy. We regularly reviewed the progress against the work program. We also there was shared participation in quality assurance measures according to predefined indicators. In regard to project outputs, we regularly reviewed the progress and gathered structure and concise preparation and collection of data impact checklist. Next work package was about dissemination, communication, and awareness raising, and dissemination strategy developed at very beginning of the project. And we also identified the stakeholders which are important for our project. We produced project brand and promotional materials. Project website was developed and maintained. We reached key European level targets and media, and also a lot of publications and press releases were issued. And also we organized informative sessions and thematic workshops to be sure that our project is going according to the plan which was set already at the beginning. We had also internal and external evaluation, and it will also be done in the last steps of the project. As Karel mentioned, project will continue until the end of January 2022. So we have few months reach all the results which were foreseen in the project, and all the time it's all the results are evaluated internally and externally, and activities organized here: finalization and implementation of internal evaluation documents, selection by tender procedure of external evaluator. It was development and provision of ongoing external evaluation, reviews of progress against the work plan and deliverables, against project aims and objectives. We also facilitated evaluation of partner meetings and analyzed results for feedback to partners, and evaluation of piloting, including settings of outcome measurement tool for assessing social and educational impact of the project results. And again, progress and final internal evaluation. So progress report is already submitted some time ago, and now we will have to submit final report by internal evaluator and also by external evaluator to our agency. Next one is work package 5, where we had to collect and systematize, categorize good practices. And at the beginning, there was developed and implemented a wizard style driven and semantically supported logical framework for systematization and categorization of inclusive learning materials and tools, methods and tools. And these materials were in 5 sectors. It was early childhood, secondary school, vocational education, higher education, and adult education. And all partners collected these materials according to categories. And all these materials were used for the practice and to customize this and understand how it works and how it works in particular national requirements and circumstances and cultural differences. All these materials are uploaded onto our MyHub portal. And as I said, we continue to collect all these materials and resources to fill in this MyHub repository. And also we discussed with governmental institutions and governmental representatives about our outcomes. We have reached different level politicians, and for example, in Latvia, we have reached that inclusive education is now stated in our law, educational law, which wasn't previously mentioned. Previously, it was said that every person has a right to education. From year 2021, April, it is stated that everyone has the right to inclusive education. And we participated in this group which developed these changes in this law. And sixth work package was this hub, development of hub. At the beginning, there was alpha version for this online hub, but it was all time tested and developed next one. So at the beginning, we collected all these materials, as I mentioned, and we collected feedback from our national advisory boards in each partner country. And as I mentioned at the beginning, it was alpha version, then beta version of this hub, and now it's optimized version for this hub where we put all these materials and where all who are interested can find these materials. And we continue to collect these materials and also tell about this to politicians and also other people who are interested in results. Seventh work package was upscaling and implementation onto practice and activities which were planned and also already realized. At the beginning, it was development of pilot plan, development of and implementation of impact gathering tool, development and implementation of handbook. At the beginning, it was planned to develop handbook differently, but we have developed it in interactive mode. I will show it a bit later, this handbook. We are quite proud of this product, which we have developed in this project. A collection of case studies from implementers and scaling up good practices on inclusive learning and their cross-educational transfer and exploitation. All these materials will be available on our webpage, and continue collecting materials and the last version of MyHub portal. And the last work package in this project is work package A, exploitation of results, which we have reached in this project. And here we developed and implemented an exploitation strategy. And we organized wide exploitation campaign, organization of round tables and focus group presentations were carried out in all partner countries. We organized meetings with representatives by the regional municipalities, educational directorates, and relevant departments of the Ministry of Education and Youth, and as well as representatives of educational committees at national parliaments responsible for the decision making. And we also negotiated exploitation agreements with relevant stakeholders. And last exploitation multiplier event will be organized in Latvia. This is one of outcomes which is not done yet, which will be held on January. And channels of information where you can find information. It's our webpage. It's our handbook, which I will show you a bit later. We have developed apps where you can find information about project materials, and also Facebook webpage. And here I will show you the links where you can reach all the materials. And as the presentations will be available for everyone, so you can be able to follow these links to find the materials. Handbook can be found in that link. Applications, we can find applications for Android phones and also for Apple phones. And please follow our Facebook page, where also you can find a lot of information, a lot of materials. That's all from my side about the project and about a lot of activities which were planned, and almost everything is already done until now. As I said, only final conference should be organized, and some dissemination activities we have to organize. Thank you. And if you have questions, please feel free.
Thank you, Linda, for this thorough introduction. In the next 2 hours, we're going to focus on a number of outcomes that have been created by the project, really looking how they are being made. The first one with which we will start is the actual hub that we have created. This will be presented by George Millis. George Millis is the CEO of GM Eurosea Innovations. He's based in Cyprus, and he has been, together with his colleagues, mainly been responsible for developing of the hub. After his presentation, we're going to have a short break, after which we're going to address also a handbook that has been created for the teaching community. This will be presented by the University of Latvia. Then we're going to look at a number of case studies, how specific practices that have been uploaded to the hub are being used or can be used by the teaching community. And then we're going to look at a range of relevant inclusive education initiatives. George, I will give you the floor so you can present the hub that has been developed for this project.
So thank you very much, Karel, for the introduction. Let me share the screen. I guess you will see it in a while. Please let me know when the screen is up.
Yes, George, that's perfect.
Okay, thank you. So, people, thank you very much for being here with us today in this few hours event. The purpose of this event, as Linda already explained, is to show to the interested people across Europe, in the partner countries and beyond, what we have been doing in the last almost 3 years now. The main outcome of the project is the so-called MyHub. MyHub stands for, it's something that I, as a person, will be using in order to get the resources that fit my own working habits. It's actually an inclusive learning hub with resources, and we want it to be pan-European. It's already translated. We have resources in 6 languages, and with the option to increase the number of resources. Of course, we need the contribution of everybody in order to maintain this and extend it, enrich it with more material, etc. I am George Millis. I come from Cyprus. I represent here Eurosea Innovations Limited. It's a company that started in 2008, and it focuses on inclusion technologies, gaming for education, and also in government in general, automation of processes of the government. Now, we already went through this information, general information about the project. I would like to have this session more interactive. So please feel free to, I will not give quizzes or so, but please feel free to interrupt whatever you need to ask, whatever you want to ask. The most important thing is that after you leave here, from this event here, you do an account on this inclusive learning hub and you start using the resources. And of course, you give us feedback to fix any issues and keep it going in the next years. Now, this is where you go into this learning hub. First of all, in order to ease the access, you can go through the main website of the project, which is the inclusionhub.eu. Here you get all the information about the project. It's also useful to have this access. And you see 2 points where you can access the MyHub application. It's either on the top right, Learning Resources Hub, or through the banner. Again, it's direct access to the MyHub. Now, beyond the English language, which we have been seeing now, you can choose any of these already 6 languages. It's in Bulgarian, in German, in Dutch, in Latvia, in Greek, in English. Maybe I'm forgetting also a couple of them. When you click on one of these flags here to change the language, immediately you have the whole of the content in the other language. And not only the content of the website, but now we are in the main page of the MyHub, of the Inclusion Hub application. You see here that you still have access to change the languages, and everything will be translated in your languages. If you see anything that is not yet translated, we can do it easily. Just drop us an email. You have the option on the top right to log in. We will see in a moment that you don't need actually to log in order to access the resources. We promote openness of these resources, at least of the information they exist, and we will see how. And on the top left, you can see a menu. We're not bothering with this menu at the moment. We will see later. So now I went just down on the screen, and without logging in, I can see the access to enter the database. There is some introduction of the database. I can click on the title or click on the button, the enter button, and see the resources. Below this, under this section of the database, we have also access to something like user manuals on how to use this hub. And there is also a mobile application which you can download from Google Play, and you will have the same access, almost same experience as you have in the online platform. And of course, then data protection, because if you log in, we will keep some contact details and everything. There is functionality related to that, and you need to have it. You see, immediately now, when I change the language, I can only see the database. Here is Bulgarian as an example. However, I want to stress that the databases are not identical. So we did not create one database of resources in English and then translate it. We did, however, we translated everything in the languages with some customizations, but the purpose here is to have each of the databases growing independently in the future. So some people interested, trainers, educators, whatever parties from Bulgaria, when they want to introduce new resources here, will see the functionality how to do it. You will have your database growing independently from what happens in the Dutch database or in the Greek database or even in the English database. The same goes for other databases, of course. So here is how you can see the presentation of the user manuals. It's actually Moodle based, so it's a very well widely adopted e-learning management system, and it has the option to share with you some learning material. One of the ways to share this material is kind of like a presentation. So here is exactly this way of sharing the material. Beyond the user manuals now, we have some courses in inclusive education. There is one in Dutch and another one in English, and this is something that will be improved and enriched in the near future, also with contribution from the community. Because we have this Moodle here, which is an e-learning platform, we have the option not only to host the resources, but also give access to open courses. So if you have courses which you would like to share in this platform, it's free, it's open. Please feel free to share it with us. Here we actually went into the database. I will use English now for convenience of myself, but when you go, you can use your own languages. I have three functionalities here. So it's we try to keep it simple. Search, view a list of the resources and navigate through this list, or view the resources one by one through the view single tab. When we say search, it's actually selecting, it's an advanced search, selecting from a number of metadata that we created for the resources in order to help detect, extract the resources that best fit what we want. We will see later this metadata. Linda has already mentioned that we have this kind of searching. It's actually like a semantic searching. We use the meaning of the resources. We studied the resources, we went through them. Most of them we knew from other projects, and we created this description of the resources in order to help you navigate through them and find exactly what you need for each case. Here is how we see a list of, no, it's a search. So I performed a search here for childhood, early childhood target education level. And I can see a list of resources which are described as having the early childhood in their target education level. It means that this resource is applicable to the early childhood, if not dedicated to the early childhood education. There is a symbol here, an icon to view more. So if you click on this icon, you will actually open the resource to view more details. Here is what you see when you open the resource. It's the metadata of the resource. I will give you a list of everything later, but now you can already see that each resource has a title. It has a type, so it can be a video, it can be a website, it can be a text to download, it can be a picture, it can be a whole course, it can be a software, whatever. There are many types of resources, predefined list of types. In some of the resources have been funded by organizations. We give these credits and we mention who has funded this, the creation of the resources. We give information about the authors of the resources, the type of disabilities that this resource is applicable to, or it can be used for. The education level we saw earlier, the language, some of the resources are available in more than one languages. This is different from the language in which you see the interface of the application of the system. It's the languages in which the actual content of the resource is available. We also give information about the intellectual property rights. Some of the resources may not be available for free. We give it here, we give access to this resource, but if you want to access a resource with intellectual property rights, that has also, I don't know, might be also charged. It's on you. It's just a portal here. We don't do financial transactions. And whether it's open educational resource as well, the OER. And then there is a number of other details that help you read through and understand what the resource is about and how to use it before you go into and downloading the resource. And here is the end of this of the page. It's actually scrolling, like scrolling down, and you can see an attachment. We give the actual resource, if possible, based on the IPR, either as an attachment, a PDF file or whatever, or as a URL, or both. If the resource is only available online, you will only see a URL. Under that, you see two functionalities which are visible here, because we want to show that they exist. So there is a rating of resources and submitting feedback for resources. And each resource lists the feedback received for the resource below. In order to access this resource, you will need to log in. So if you click on any of these links, you will be asked to log in. The reason for that is we don't want to collect anonymous comments that we have to monitor the quality and everything. So if somebody wants to rate or contribute to this effort somehow, it's simple to create an account. All GDPR aspects are respected and the rights of people are respected. You give a username and a password. It's, the creation of an account is simple as in any other web applications. When you log in, you again see the resources, and you have also the menu where you can access some courses. Maybe some of the courses will not be available for public. And also when you enter the resource, the database of resources, you will see 3 more functionalities. One of them is the suggest new resource. You see the board, the red border there. Suggesting a new resource is actually bringing something new in the database. You participate in the community of maintaining this whole thing, which is free and open. Suggesting a new resource is actually creating one. The only difference is that the resource will not appear immediately. It will go to the administrators to review and approve. Maybe they come back to you. That's why we need contact details. Yeah. Has anybody want to ask something? Okay, maybe they come back to, the administrators will get back to you and ask for refinements in order to ensure that the quality of the presentation is maintained high. Now, rating the resource is the simple 5-star scale. So the reason for that is if people are navigating through the sources, they might want to focus on resources that have been rated high from by other users. This functionality can be extended in the future to allow profiling of the ratings, etc. We don't have it now. And also you can submit feedback. And if you see the feedback, it's actually this simple thing, who submitted the feedback, what it is about. And beyond just commenting, we also want to know who has used this resource and if it has been improved by using it. So if you have done changes, some of the open resources, you can do changes on them. Ideally, you will get back to this platform and suggest these changes or suggest to add a new resource with the changes. Now, beyond the normal use as an interested party navigating through this database, the administrators, I thought useful to show you that an administrator has a number of more functionalities to check and approve the resources, the feedback, to add more resources, and also manage how the resources are displayed. At the moment, Also for accessibility reasons, we don't bother into creating very fancy interface, but the way we present the resources can be managed also by the administrators. What a resource is for us, the metadata, the description of the resource. I already explained the type of the resource, the authors, the type of the disability, if it's for people with learning difficulties, if it's for blind persons, if it's for people with kinetic disabilities, etc. So some of the resources might not be applicable to every type of disability. The target education level, some of the resources are for secondary education, primary, early childhood, vocational training, etc. The languages, the intellectual property, the attachment, the URL, and this we have not seen until now. It's actually an effort by the team here to give you some first reading, a high-level reading of what the objectives of this resource are for inclusive learning and details for these objectives, what the specific purpose of the resource is in inclusive learning. So beyond the overall objective, some resources may have a very specific objectives, intervention logic, indicators that show if you have achieved these objectives or not. The sources, how to verify that you have achieved these objectives, and any risks or challenges we identified for these resources. You can come back to us and suggest changes, refinements, and improvements of these texts we created. And also the expected results by implementing this resource. We went through the resources and we give you a short description of what the expected results are for each of the resources and what activities you need to implement in order to achieve the objectives and have the results of the implementation. Information has some links inside maybe. The reason for having it is not to get you bored, but it's actually to help you understand if you need that resource before you download or buy the resource if it's not an open resource. And this is it for the Learning Hub. I'd like to thank you for your time and for your interest in being here. And I'm at your disposal to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, George. Could you maybe also expand a little bit on the mobile application that we have for the project?
Yes, so mobile application is an application for the learning resources, and you can download this application from, let us go and find it together in Google Play. So it's an Android application. It can run. Karel, do we also have an iOS already, or it's in the plan?
Yes, there's also an iOS version available.
Okay, I will just show the Android now because of the access. I didn't have it in the presentation, so.
Maybe George, you can try to reach it through the web page.
Yeah, it will be easier. Actually,
I think it was on the first page somewhere.
Yeah. I wanted to show also how to find it on Google Play, but since we have the direct link, here it is. So you can download the Android application if you have a device like a Samsung device or Huawei that they run on Android, or the iOS application is the applications that run on iPhones, iPads, etc. And if you click here, immediately it takes you where I was trying to go earlier by searching. and you just install on your mobile phone. If you do install and you open this application, again, you will have access to the resources available in the Inclusion Hub that we saw earlier. You will have access to the courses, you will have access to the resources and navigate through them and download the resources. It's not providing any new functionality, it's replicating the functionality you have on the Inclusion Hub.
Okay, thank you for that, George. Another question I would like maybe that you could address. When someone enters the hub, is there any support for people to better understand how the hub is working, what the functionalities are?
Beyond the one thing that exists, now we are online, is actually these resources here. How to use the learning resources and how to use the mobile application.
Could you
so the first thing, the first time you go and you want to use this content, we suggest that you go through this guide here. You can also download it and you read. It has a full explanation or whatever I show already now, how to create an account, how to enter, how to go to the databases of the resources, and how to view, search, and everything. It's a simple guide how to use these applications. Beyond that, because this is something that you can do on your own, beyond that, you can come to the website and just contact us from here. You will reach the administrators of the application, and we'll be happy actually to get in touch with you and explain what we mean by suggesting a new resource, how this, to explain also this metadata template we have, because honestly, it's not something that some people need to understand how to create it. But if you do create it, it helps others to find the resources they want. These are the two ways to contact. And also the social media. I forgot to mention the social media. We have access pages, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, so feel free to drop us messages and we will get back to you. Thank you, Karel.
Okay, thank you for that. So for everyone here present, the resources that are being uploaded are really resources that have been checked in various countries. And some of these resources we have seen are relevant also for other countries. This is what we're going to address in the session where we're going to look at case studies from implementers. And we will go to address the concept of inclusion champion in schools. We're going to address there the principle of Sticordi, a very specific inclusive education practice from Belgium, which has also been uploaded as a resource to the platform. Now, if I can get my access back. Yeah, I will kick you out, George.
Okay.
We're going to have a short break. The break will be from 3 o'clock till 3:15. Take the opportunity to have a nice cup of coffee, and then we start again at 3:15. Thank you all for your attention so far, and then we talk to each other again in 15 minutes. Hello, 3:15. We're going to continue with the presentations. The next presentation that we are going to have is a presentation by, again, University of Latvia. I will address the handbook, how to strengthen the implementation of the inclusive education at mainstream schools. This is an online handbook that is available in multiple languages, and I look forward to the presentation by University of Latvia. You have the floor.
I have a screen. Okay.
You have the screen and the floor.
Yeah, obviously, yeah. Okay. So now I will show you this handbook, which means that you will not will have to look at a presentation which I prepared, but just I will go through this handbook. And I already mentioned that at the beginning, when project proposal was prepared, it was planned that it will be like a regular handbook, as it is usually. But during the project, we decided that this handbook can be a bit more different. And now it's an interactive handbook, and you can find it here by following link. I will put the link in the chat box. And you can search it there. But what I wish to show you that it's interactive. So you start and click on parts. For example, you click on part, the current status of inclusive education in partner countries. So you just find which country you are interested in. Let's say that I am interested in Belgium, and I click on Belgium. And it's in Belgian level, Flanders level, and if you are from Belgium, Flanders, you just change the language by pushing the button on languages, and you can find that there are, for example, beginning is in 4 languages, followed introduction in 3 languages. Also, information about Belgium is in English and in Flemish, it's correct, I think. So you can easily change languages here. You can change table of content. You can just scroll down and you do not need to read all the handbook. If you are not interested in the handbook, you just scroll down the table of content and push what topic you are interested in. Again, you can change languages, in which language you wish to read this information. Also, you can print materials. And once you will be in one chapter, you will not all the handbook in one file, because it could be too much waste of paper maybe. You will get this chapter in which you are looking for the information. Also, of course, you can share the this link on information you can find on this handbook. So here you can, of course, forward you have here in this handbook, you have introduction part, where you will read the information, short description of the project, description of the purpose of the handbook and the content. In different languages, we can read the chapter about equity and implementation of inclusive education, and it's in sub-chapters we can find the information about situation in world and the situation in European level. And also you can find information, the current status of inclusive education in partner countries, as I already showed. You can choose the countries. Here, Latvia, Bulgaria, Belgium, Cyprus. Also, you can find information about competencies and attitudes in inclusive teaching staff for promoting inclusive education, continuing professional development towards inclusive education. Here you can find information, for example, what available trainings are in Latvia. If you are interested in Latvia, you just push Latvian language and it will be changed on Latvian language. If you wish to find information about Bulgaria, you push Bulgaria and it's again, you push an icon and get information in Bulgarian language. So it's, I suggest that you just go through and see information. Next part in English, we have to switch in English now because I don't read Bulgarian, sorry. What does it mean, inclusive teaching into practice? Again, different parts in Latvia, in Cyprus, Belgium, Bulgaria. Effective and innovative study materials that support the implementation of inclusive education and how to create them. Again, from all the countries which are involved in this project. And you also can find links. For example, here are links to Latvian materials. Of course, I suppose that you are interested not in Latvian materials, but maybe in Bulgarian or Cypriot materials. So you follow again links in languages and choose what materials you are interested in. Then we have part on ICT for inclusive education, and also for all the materials, for all the parts of this handbook, there is information about people who contributed to develop this material. And here you can find different lesson plans, how to organize inclusive learning activities. And for example, if you read here, you can find materials about dyslexia, how you can use these materials, what you should take in mind, also materials in Bulgarian language, the same in Flemish language, and the same in Cypriot language, information about serious games. And you can see that also here you have information, and again links where you can find some more materials which can be used for your inclusive practices. For example, robotic games. Also a lot of links, a lot of materials which can be useful for your inclusive practices if you want to make some lessons or develop some activities. You can find a lot of information here. Online and mobile learning and interaction toward constructivist knowledge construction, teaching and learning approaches. And here also a lot of materials, assistive technologies for education, pedagogical, technological, and organizational innovations, relevant initiatives, information on relevant initiatives. Again, here a lot of links for your use, and you can choose which one you like best. As we all are in COVID situation or post-COVID situation where we had to organize remote educational activities, we added a part on remote learning, on different solutions for remote learning and remote education. Here again, a lot of information, and you also can follow the links from the materials we have used here. And next part is how the social media and internet campaigns can promote awareness of inclusive education. Here you can find information from different examples how social campaigns are organized. And you can follow the links where you can find the information in Latvian, in Bulgaria, in Cyprus, in Belgium. And also, if you are interested, of course, you can find the information about contributors who has worked to develop this material. And again, I would say that all of project partners from different countries worked to develop this material. This is made from scratch. It's not ready-made materials which we just filled in. It's prepared for the project. It's prepared for users' convenience, to make it simply to use, to make it maybe not so boring to read all the materials through, but just look for the information in which you are interested in. And here are all the references. If you are interested in some materials and wish to follow and find the information and deeper understanding on something, you can find it all here. And it's also very convenient to find all the materials summarized in one place. Yeah, and this is it from my side.
Thank you very much, Linda, for this overview. As you kept it quite short, we'll have more time to detail the various case studies that we had in mind. I will introduce the next speaker on this. That is Petja Grueva, and she will focus on the inclusion ambassadors concept that exists and that has been worked on by the team of MCA. Furthermore, Petja is a psychologist and has been working in the domain of inclusive education for many, many years, I may say. So Petja, I will give you the floor.
Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for being with us today. It is a great pleasure for me and for my colleagues to be able to introduce you one of our previously completed projects and the concept behind it. When we talk about the inclusive education, we always focus our attention on the regulation and the children in the classroom. But somehow we forget to mention the new role of today's teachers. And this is the reason why we, together with partners from Belgium and Turkey, 3 years ago have developed this concept based on the key principles of the inclusive education. So in the next slides, I will introduce you the main outcomes and the concept for the inclusive ambassadors, how we call them, or the inclusive champions. The project has been completed at the end of 2020, and this is the reason why today we can use its final outcomes and we can access them freely as they are available through the e-learning platform and through the mobile application. On this slide, you can see the official project website, which is still maintained and will be maintained for at least 3 years from now on. So everyone interested could access the materials that will be presented briefly during today's event. And this project was funded by Erasmus Plus program of the European Commission. And again, this is a proof that those projects who are funded by the Erasmus Plus program are not just projects that create materials which can be used for free by the European taxpayers. But through this project, we also try to promote concepts, try to create new mindsets on teachers and their students. If in the past, the role of the teacher was mainly to teach the educational concept and content and to help students to master the content in a best possible way, in nowadays, I would say that the role of the teacher is to teach values, principles, and concepts that are applicable not only in the school, but also in the daily life of their students. Also, another important role of the teacher is to promote the proactive behavior on his students, no matter whether it is in the classroom or in the school or in the community. What does it mean? The teacher is the one who can inspire the students to be active, to be supportive, to promote critical thinking and to make them to act upon socially important causes. Another important role is to ensure that all students are equally involved in the teaching process. What it means, it purely means promotion of diversity, because everyone is different, especially in today's schools, where children should be considered with their strengths, weaknesses, with their different family and social background, with their different abilities or disabilities. So it's not just to teach them how to do the tasks, but also to help them to become part of one small community within the school first, and then within the society as a whole. And the last role, which is extremely important on my opinion, this is the role to trigger the change. Because what we are trying to do on policy level is to integrate the inclusive education concept and to make it reality in our school. But is it possible without teachers who actually should trigger the change of mindset on individual level among other teachers as well as among their students? So considering all these roles of today's teachers that are much more diverse than just to promote and ensure that the educational process takes place in the best possible way, we created the profile of the inclusive ambassador. This is a teacher. This could be also school psychologist. This could be any staff member of the school who is eager to promote diversity and to work with students' abilities. On this slide, you can see the main qualities that each inclusive ambassador should possess. And here the highlight is on the ability of the teacher to recognize students' abilities and to see them as a resource rather than a deficit. Because we all have certain capabilities and certain disadvantages. And the role of the inclusive ambassador is to find these abilities and to use them as a resource in order to promote inclusive education. Also, the inclusive ambassador should be the one who is able to work in a team, who is able to seek for support from other professionals when it is needed, when the child should be supported. The inclusive ambassador also should be able to assess the individual child's needs. I know that this is a kind of cliche. In all therapies, in all interventions, in all teaching practices, we talk about child-centered approaches. But are we able to really implement them into practice? Are we able to assess the real needs of the child and to act upon them? This is another specific characteristic of the inclusive ambassador, to be able to assess these needs and to adapt his teaching styles in order to make the process accessible and understandable for everyone. To be included does not mean that just the child is present in the classroom. This means that the child is really able to participate in the teaching process, in the education process, but also to be together with his classmates during the breaks. And we also put emphasis on some informal duties of the inclusive ambassador, namely to inspire children to act together as a small community. In order to achieve all these goals and roles that are listed in the profile of the inclusion ambassador, we created 4 major outcomes. The first one is a handbook on principles, values, and roles of the inclusive ambassadors. I tried to describe them very briefly, but in this handbook, we not just explain the concept of inclusive ambassador and the background of the inclusive ambassador, but we give also some tips, guidelines, and strategies how the inclusive ambassador could act and implement the inclusive education in the real classroom of one mainstream school. Another outcome is a guide on the concept of inclusive education and the main principles of inclusive education as we see them. Although we know the European, international and national legislation with regards to the inclusive education, we also here in this guide try to summarize some practical examples. And in the annexes of this guide, the readers can find more than 50 practices on how they can adjust their strategies on certain subjects in accordance with child's needs. And in the last slides of my presentation, I will present you just one example of a case that is included in these learning scenarios, how we call them. The third outcome is material which stimulates the cross-school cooperation and peer support among teachers. Maybe you will agree or not, but teachers, like all other professionals, are more willing to learn from their colleagues, not from the politicians, not from the formal education or during events. They want to hear and learn from the experience of their colleagues who perhaps share the same issues, the same challenges, and maybe have been through different situations with students with disabilities. That's why we believe that if the teachers are able to share and explain good practices from their work, this will be the ideal case to boost the implementation of the inclusive education. That's why we highlight in this guide the importance of the peer support, how it could be practically organized, and we also suggest some particular steps for cross-school cooperation. And the last product is, as I mentioned before, this is the e-learning platform where you can access all these materials for free in different languages, including Dutch, Bulgarian, and English, and also the mobile application for those who would like to access the training materials via their mobile devices. We also have mobile application which can be downloaded from Google Play, and everyone can use these materials for free. And this is in the nutshell the concept and the main outcomes of the Inclusive Ambassadors project. In the next slide, I would like to introduce you one specific case which was included in the guide. As I mentioned before, we have around 50 learning scenarios on different subjects like mathematics, biology, chemistry, Bulgarian language, English language, etc. And we selected just one because we have limited time, but all of them are following the same template. So in the first part, we explain the profile of the student. In our case, this is a 15 years old child with autism spectrum disorders. He's studying in the mainstream school in Bulgaria. And in this learning scenario, we present the lesson on foreign language, in our case in English. And the main purpose of this lesson is to teach the names of the vegetables in English. So the student has the task to learn the names in English of the vegetables. In the next part, we explain the activities included in the lesson. It is highlighted in the scenario that this student work on individual task because of his abilities. The teacher decided to give him a different task than the one that the other classmates are working on at the moment, so that the child can cope with the task and show his capacity. Well, here, some of the tasks are first, the child also is matched with his peer, who also support him. This is a child that he knows well and feel at ease. So the other child is supporting the child with autism, and he pronounces the words in English first. Then the child explains what is the meaning in Bulgarian with the simple steps. And then the child with autism is invited to match the words in English with the corresponding photo. So we have visual materials that are implemented here, but we also have auditory channel, because the teacher also use simulator in order to support the child to hear well how the specific word is pronounced in English from this simulator. In the next slide, we explain the steps. And here in the scenario, there is a specific part which presents the steps and also at what extent the teacher had to support the child. And as a first step, what he should have been done first and what is next. In our case, the teacher first explain the overall goal of the task and then break down into the smaller step in order to allow the child with autism to follow the task, but divide it in a small steps. So first he read the names of the vegetables in English, then he matched the corresponding word with the respective photo or picture. Then the child, as a second step, is invited to complete or to fulfill the missing letters in order to train his writing skills. Then, as a next step, the child is again invited to pronounce together with his classmate the correct names in English, and the teacher observe the process and make corrective actions where needed. As a last step, as you can notice, there is a rewarding mechanism, because the task itself was break down into the smaller steps, and if the child is able to complete these steps successfully with the relevant support by the teacher and by the peer, then there is a reward. The teacher is aware that the child likes painting. That's why the teacher gives as a last step in this lesson task to the child to paint the vegetables. That's he memorize once more the names of the vegetables in English by painting them. So here we have also the so-called emotional learning. It's not just learning the words in English, but this is emotional involvement of the child and his peer as well. This is just one example how we can implement small adjustments in our teaching style in order to make the process accessible. Of course, there were challenges in this lesson. The other classmates in the class were working on another tasks, so they were noisy environment, they were quite a lot of stimulus. But despite that, the student was able to complete this task. And this is the role of the, how we call it, inclusive ambassador, to know the child and to find the right approach in order to engage not only just this child with specific educational needs, but also his classmates. And this does not require a lot of financial resources or specific software. This is just the attitude of the teacher and a little bit of didactic adjustments in order to make the process accessible, the teaching process accessible for this specific child. In this example, we refer to the child with autism, but in the other learning scenarios, you will find many more disabilities addressed. For example, complex disabilities, visual impairments, hearing impairments, intellectual disabilities, and other also. So we just try to cover the whole spectrum of specific educational needs, and all these scenarios are applied in real mainstream schools in Bulgaria, in Belgium, and in Turkey. And indeed, I can prove that these scenarios can be easily implemented in another schools. These are our inclusive education champions. These are our inclusive education ambassadors who test these scenarios. And now they're available. You can access them through the official project website and also through the mobile application. I think in the time that I had for today's event, I tried to summarize the concept behind the inclusive education. And if you recognize yourself as an ambassador of inclusion, just go visit the site and think over it, because your role maybe is not so visible, but it is something that matters and determines the child's development. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Petja, for this nice presentation. Maybe important also to notice here. On the MyHub portal, we are also uploading outcomes from projects where we see that there is this viability of the project beyond its duration. And Inclusive Ambassadors is a typical example, Petja, of a project has created very handy handbooks that should also be disseminated to other teachers. Hence also why the outcomes of this project are also uploaded to MyHubs in a number of languages. Okay, that brings us to the next, let's say, resource and practice that has been uploaded to our portal. Sorry. And this will be specifically Sticordi measures. Now, Belgian teachers will know quite quickly what Sticordi means. Sticordi is a practice which is very popular in Flanders, and it stands for stimulating and encouraging, compensating, remedying, and then differentiate and dispense. In Dutch, that would be stimuleren, compenseren, remediëren, and differentiëren. And these are a number of measures that teachers use to allow any kind of student with any type of disability to be able to enjoy also the education in the classroom, but taking into account what I mentioned before, the specific measures: stimulating, encouraging, compensating, remedying, differentiating, and dispensing. I'm going to address each one of them because originally this material was only available in Dutch. So as part of this project, we have also translated all these measures to English because we recognized that there was a lot of relevance for other countries to also be aware of these measures. First of all, if someone wants to stimulate or compensate the student to apply a different or remediating measures, they do not require any permission from parents and etc. But if there is a dispensing measure, then the approval of the accompanying class council is required. And we'll come back to that for each one of them to better explain what is meant. It is also important that when we apply Stichordi measures, that these are always done in collaboration with a number of core stakeholders. First and foremost, the parents. It is practice in Flemish schools when Stichordi measures are being applied that the parents are involved in this and are closely consulted and also advised. The reason is also that often parents know how their child acts best in a certain situation under a certain condition and how they can be helped. So it is here really an exchange between the teachers and the parents. Then there's of course the student. The student which is at the center of the whole reason why Stichordi is being applied. The student is also asked for feedback to also explain, is this the best way that is more appropriate for you to study and to participate in the class lessons or in the class activities. Then there is a teacher. More and more, and actually Petty already addressed it, more and more teachers get more and more responsibilities. Where in the past, I remember that my dad used to always say, I am the teacher and I write on the blackboard and you listen to me because you are the pupil. And he tended to repeat that quite a lot when we did not behave very well. Now, a teacher nowadays is totally different because the teacher has to take into account the variety, the plurality that is in the classroom. He or she needs to consider students with and without disabilities. This is especially the case after the introduction of inclusive education as part of the United Nations Rights of People with Disabilities, Article 24 on inclusive education. But at the same time, these are then confronted with things they don't know. So that's why it's very important that the teacher is also involved. Also the colleagues of the teacher. And here I would like to link it with what Petja said before about these inclusion ambassadors. These inclusion ambassadors or colleagues of the teacher are very important to share knowledge, acquire knowledge. And then finally, but this is specifically for Belgium, Flanders, the schools work together with the CLB. The CLB, that's a Center for Educational Guidance. And they actually not only look at the physical health of the children, but also at the mental health, also at the learning capacity of the students. So any type of measure that is being applied has to go in as a result of a cooperative working between these stakeholders. So let's now have a look. So for who is it addressed? So Stichordi measures are for students in primary and secondary education that have disability or a learning difficulty. It is not necessary that this diagnosis is made, but it is therefore important that the parents at least inform the teacher about any kind of need. As I said before, these Stichordi measures are for specific types of disabilities are gradually developed in Dutch, but now we have also made them in English, at least those that are absolutely ready. We have made them available in English and they're also uploaded to the MyHub's portal. So encouraging. So that's the first part of Stichordi. Sti stands for stimuleren in Dutch, stimulate, encourage. There it's really the student as the centerpiece and emphasizing that, putting the focus on what he or she can succeed in. So that's, for example, using scorecards, making sure that the person is in the appropriate place in the classroom. For example, maybe very simple issue, someone with very low vision, with very low residual vision. Yeah, this person should not be at the back of the class. You put that in the front. You put the person in the front so he or she can better see as well, and is also encouraged to participate. Okay, so another thing is, for example, focusing on the individual learning results. In the good old days, as we tend to say, the teacher would often expose students that had problems with learning. Results were publicly read out. This is also not very encouraging, especially for a student that has difficulties. So there we look at an individual approach. The CO stands for compenseren in Dutch, or compensating, allowing any kind of technical aid so that the student can compensate for his or her disability, allowing reading software, allowing word processing programs. For example, what many people do not know, you can actually record a classroom session in video, and then you run it through an online program and everything is written out afterwards, including indicating there's another speaker talking and now this is being said. So there's a lot of software and solutions available to support students with any type of disability. So these are already the first two parts: stimulating, encouraging, and compensating. Then the other ones, the RD and the Y, remedying and dispensing. So remedying is providing an individual learning aid, and an individual learning aid that allows the person to eliminate a specific problem. This could be, for example, a person that is helping or assisting the student. This obviously needs to be discussed with the student and with the teachers and with the parents. Another element, for example, remedying, is a student has problems reading, and then, for example, trying to avoid specific reading work where the focus is not really on reading. This also, for example, means that an exam that is, for example, in history, and the student makes a lot of spelling mistakes, could be because of dyslexia, for example, then agreeing with the teacher of history, based on the fact that the student has indeed, for example, dyslexia, that he does not focus on spelling mistakes in the answers. Some of you may think, but this is strange, but in reality, we have seen this in schools many times, whereby a teacher is actually deducting lots of points from students that otherwise had good results, would have good results, for example, in history, but had problems with writing. Dispensing. That is actually abandoning or replacing certain learning objectives. An example, dictation language courses. If you know that dictation language courses is really creating a problem because of the specific disability, try to exempt the student as much as possible from such type of exercise where we know that there will be a problem. The students with anxiety problems. Well, often in school there are group assignments. Try to see if, for example, group assignment could be replaced with an individual assignment. Anxiety with regards to water. Anxiety with regards to huge spaces. So there are a number of ways that actually we can look at dispensing certain situations. So those are the main elements of Sticordi. Now, what I did as the following, I looked together with my colleagues at a number of examples that exist in Dutch of Sticordi measures. And here is just a snapshot of the top of each page. So for each of the type of disabilities, there are like, I guess, around 50, 60 Sticordi measures. For example, here we only see stimulate, but there are many more to address all the specific measures. For example, this is the case for dyslexia, for example. So this is a card that is then given to the student, to the teacher. The name of the pupil is filled in what class is he, what is the period where this will be applied. And then for each type, for example, stimulate, possible Sticordi measures, to be aware of the problem of the student, to take it into account. And then the question is this applicable? Are you doing this, yes or no? Or is it possible to be done? So for every student, then the teacher can create such a Sticordi measure card. This is also very interesting because this Sticordi measure card can be transferred to the next teacher. In primary education, often the same teacher, for example, I think in Bulgarian model, the same teacher stays with the same year and follows them up till the 6th grade. In Belgium, this is, for example, different, where every year there's another teacher that is leading the class together with some colleagues. But each one of them could be provided with such a stick coordinate measure card. Of course, this is with the approval of, sorry, with the approval of the student and the parents. We have here next, if my slides want to move, next one that focuses on attention deficit or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Again, the same, we ask again the same kind of questions. For those that are very interested in this, they are all uploaded in one PDF onto the MyHub portal. The same we have for autism. We do a similar approach for dyscalculia students, for students with dysphasia, and also for students with non-verbal learning disabilities. For those that are interested in the Dutch versions, they can be found via this website, and again also they are uploaded in the Dutch resource center, let's say, on the MyHub portal. And I think that was the last slide of this presentation. That means that we have to look at our next. Are there any questions on any of the presentation made by Petja and myself? No? Okay. Then I will introduce the next speakers. So now we are going to look, in fact, at a number of initiatives that are directly linked to inclusive education. They are new running projects. Some of us are also participating in them. And the first one we're going to introduce here is digital inclusive pedagogical competences of educators. This will be presented by Mrs. Silvia Ikimova. She's from the school Paisi Hilendarski in Plovdiv. Sylvia is their teacher, and she will introduce us to this DIPSI project. Sylvia, if you're there, you're free to share your. Oh yeah, I see you. You're free to share your presentation with everyone. And again, if you have any questions, please put it in the chat session so that afterwards we can address them. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, Karel, I'd like to thank you for inviting us to this multiplier event, and congratulations on the good organization of it. And secondly, probably I'd like to ask you if I could manage to share my screen and to tell me if I change the slides. So can you see it now?
We can see your slides. If you can put it on full screen.
Oh, well, I'm not sure how exactly
at the
can I do
bottom
that.
right, you see at the bottom right, Sylvia.
Yes.
There, the fourth icon, the fourth one. Fourth icon on the right. There you will see, or you otherwise you click on F5 and your screen will maximize.
F5, okay, I will try with that. And
Yeah,
do the slides
perfect.
change now?
Yeah, perfect, we see it.
Okay, thank you very much. So I will introduce DIPSI project, which we are partners in, and we are working on it. So the whole name, the full name is Digital and Inclusive Pedagogical Competencies of Educators. It is funded by Erasmus Plus program, and just a second, here I've got something, and it is key activity 2, cooperation for innovation and the exchange of good practices for school education. The duration of that project is 24 months. It started June 21 and it will finish May 2023. Here we've got 4 countries as partners from Spain, Bulgaria, Belgium, and Greece. The coordinator is Universidad Complutense de Madrid. from Spain. And the partners are one more partner from Spain, Asociación Madrilena de Profesionales de la Atención Temprana, if I read it correctly. From Bulgaria, we've got 3 partners. This is NARHO, which is non-governmental organization of professionals working with people with disabilities. Our school, St. Paisi Hilendarski Secondary School, and the Center for Special Educational Support. Another partner is PhoenixKM from Belgium, and from Greece, we've got 2 partners, Euphora and 3rd Primary School of Hermopolis. This is the logo of the project we've created. And this project will enable the development of a model for embedding digital resources into teachers' pedagogical practice. It consists of 2 dimensions. One of them deals with the types of factors associated with teacher take-up of digital content. And the other one is concerned with the characteristics of various stakeholders and the nature of digital curriculum resources and supporting technology. Dedicated toolkit will be provided that will offer teachers the means to create digital learning content and to deploy digital inclusive education practices almost instantly. Which are the target groups and the beneficiaries? So this project is targeted to teachers in primary and secondary education and also to support teachers and school staff. The beneficiaries are children with disabilities, children from economically disadvantaged families, children from minority groups, and also their parents. We have 4 intellectual outputs in this project, and I will briefly go through them. This is our model for embedding digital curriculum resources into inclusive teachers' pedagogical practice. The main themes which are included in this intellectual output are design principles and factors. And the factors are contextual, general change factors, innovation-specific factors, systemic factors. Another themes included are inclusive teaching and learning practices, virtuous cycles of inclusion triggered by digital inclusion, COVID-19 impact. There are impact cases from each country, and there will be 15 chapters included in this intellectual output as a whole. Intellectual output 2 is a handbook which is called Steps for Transferring a Course Online in an Inclusive Manner. The handbook includes 7 chapters. Some of them are digital skills development and ICT in inclusive education. Also includes self-assessment framework, inclusive teaching principles, digital educational resources, steps for transferring a course online in an inclusive manner, and more. Intellectual output 3 is set of instructive graphs, online, mobile, and printable, and explanatory animated videos to support the implementation of inclusive remote education. Some of the activities which are included in this intellectual output are creation of set of instructive graphs, development of animated videos via VideoScribe, production of printable version of the instructive graphs, iterative testing and piloting. Intellectual output 4 This is supportive portal with searchable database with regards to inclusive remote teaching practices, trajectories, inclusive learning environments, and accessible open source repositories, training materials, software, etc. This portal will present good practices from the partners' countries. Here we have chosen one of our practices, which I will present briefly to you. This is a lesson from the first grade conducted by Evgenia Staneva. This is a full-time teacher at our school. The lesson is in Bulgarian language and literature subject, and the topic is picture dictation. This lesson was conducted online in the form of an audio-visual didactic tool for presentation through multimedia. The lesson contains pictures of 13 objects in which only the studied letters up to the moment are used. It has also audio instruction and is used for online training. There are several pictures with different objects of them, as you can see them here, which the students look at, and then they have to write the names of each object. After that, together with the teacher, they check how many subjects they have found and whether they have written the names of the objects correctly. After several experiments, it has been proven that when children learn to write the names of the objects, they can see they memorize both the new words and their spelling much more faster. So in this lesson, the pupil with special educational needs managed to find 7 words. The words saw, thermometer, it wasn't spelled correctly. Swarm, 0, the pupil said the letter O instead of 0. Flock and January, all these words were difficult for the pupil. At the end of the lesson, each student self-assessed themselves using the following scale or ladder of success. It says, the first step says, I understood nothing. I made a lot of mistakes. The second step says, I've got more questions. I made some mistakes. And the third step, the higher one, says, I understood everything. I did it well. So this is one of our practices from our school. This photo is a photo from one of our online meetings. And under the photo, you can see the website of the project, the Facebook page, and here is also my email. So this is about the project very briefly. If you've got any questions, you are welcome.
Are there any questions for Sylvia? No. Maybe to highlight, this project was the result of the fact that we had realized with a number of organizations that COVID had a very detrimental negative impact on online education when it concerned students with disabilities. So we saw on the one hand that some students could benefit from the fact that they had online education, but actually also many students did not benefit. Example of those that could benefit were those that normally already had problems to access the school because, for example, of mobility impairment, who could now benefit from online education, while, for example, a student with autism got really lost because the daily routine was broken up by this type of online education. So out of this concern, and this concern was actually also raised in the MyHubs project, we started talking with a number of organizations and say, yes, we would like to work on in that direction. And that's actually how DIPSI was established, and this project will also try to achieve its results in the next 2 years. So thank you again, Sylvia, for this very good introduction to the project, and we look forward to have the results disseminated during one of the next following years, hopefully with a physical event meeting in Bulgaria or in Madrid. Okay.
Thank you, Karen.
Our next speaker is Mufti Mahmoud. He's from Nottingham Trent University, and he will introduce us into the AI Top project. AI Top project stands for an AI tool, artificial intelligence tool, to predict engagement and meltdown events in students with autism. On the next slide, if it comes up, yes, so this is Mufti, Senior Lecturer of Computer Science. And I will give the floor to you, Mufti. I saw you are there, so please go ahead and present the AI Top project. A very interesting project, by the way, because it really uses artificial intelligence to support students with autism. So looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much, Karel. So I'm just going to share my screen. Can you see?
Yes, we see that perfectly. Go ahead, Mufti.
Oh, okay, excellent. So first of all, thank you very much, Karel, for this opportunity to share some of the ideas that we have put together here. Also, a number of attendees who are attending this particular meeting also share the credit of putting this idea together. So this AI Top project, where we aim to develop an AI tool to predict engagement and meltdown events in students with autism. Now I'm Dr. Mufti Mahmoud presenting the project on behalf of the consortium. So I'm an Associate Professor of Cognitive Computation at the Nottingham Trent University, as introduced by Karel. So, well, this project has got a number of partners. So, Nottingham Trent University coordinates the project with the help of PhoenixKM, Nahru Software from Serbia, the Nottingham City Council in the UK, and University of Thessaly, Greece. So we have a number of partners addressing the different aspects of the projects, which we are going to see very soon. So the project's duration is 36 months. So it started in September 2020, and it is due to end in 31st of August 2023, and it was funded through the co-fund Erasmus Plus program of the European Union under the KA or Key Action 201. And the project coordinator is Professor David Brown, and who is the Director of Computing and Research Informatics Center, the Department of Computer Science at Nottingham Trent University in the UK. And I invite you all to browse through the website, which is aiautism.eu. And also we have got a Facebook page. So AI Autism, please do share or subscribe to the Facebook page, or like the Facebook page, so that you can be updated about the different activities that we are doing as a part of it. So now, as we have said, that the idea of the project is actually to predict meltdown in students with autism, so that we can improve the engagement and their learning capabilities. So let's first understand what is meltdown. I know that many of you are probably aware about what meltdown is, but still, let me just briefly introduce what meltdown is actually. So a meltdown is an intense response to overwhelming circumstances, and during a meltdown, the person completely loses the behavioral control. So these circumstances could be triggered by many different things. Okay, so usually what happens is people with autism often have difficulty expressing when they are feeling overly anxious or overwhelmed, which leads to an involuntary coping mechanism, which is actually meltdown, in the sense that, whenever they are overly anxious or overwhelmed, they actually try to in certain sense, just tackle themselves in a very specific and special way, which is the meltdown, which actually has got a number of diverse effects in the children. And there are a number of different things which actually trigger these meltdown, and these could be sensory overload, and this could be information overload and emotional overload, in the sense that, well, maybe for some students or for some children, a loud sound or bright lights could actually trigger meltdown, or for some other, it could be a lot of information or a lot of talking and other things which might provide a lot of input to them, might trigger the meltdown. Whereas for a number of them, actually, maybe some emotional situation, okay, which also could lead, some, of course, negative emotion could lead actually the meltdown. Now, meltdown is the ultimate situation where the child actually completely loses the behavioral control. But there are some situations which are known as the rumble moment or rumble stage, where we can actually understand some part of, or which actually serves as an indication of an early indication of what is going to happen next. So this is, as we understand, could be considered as an initial stage of an tantrum, rage, or meltdown. Okay. Now, what we see during the rumble stage is that there are some specific behavioral changes which may not appear directly related to the meltdown, but which may indicate that there might be a meltdown happening soon. And these includes both major and minor behavioral changes. These minor behavioral changes include, for example, nail biting, tensing muscles, or let's say otherwise, in some cases, indicating some discomfort that the child is not feeling well. On the other hand, the major behaviors might include withdrawal from others, like not talking to anyone else, just suddenly withdraw from the activities or from the people that they were with, and then threatening others. It could be verbally, and also in certain cases, it could also be physically. So specifically in this particular case, it is very much needed to have adult intervention, okay? And these kind of intervention could include, for example, anti-septic bouncing, and then proximity control, support from routine, and providing them a home base where they can really feel comfortable and homely. So one of the main ideas of this particular AI Talk project is actually have an iterative and incremental character, and it aims to develop, let's say, a new innovative pedagogical methodology to be able to provide a blueprint on how AI technology can be introduced into classrooms for the benefit of the students with autism. So as we understood that, well, if we can, let's say, detect the rumble moment, we can actually probably prevent some of the students from going or leading to a meltdown moment, which could actually be a harmful situation for the students. So we aim to develop an algorithm, okay, which can be trained to infer the level of engagement of students with autism and predict the meltdown events. So, well, if we can actually identify when this rumble stage, in the rumble stage, that, well, this rumble stage is happening, then we can probably then alert the caregivers or an adult person who is in charge to provide the necessary intervention or support so that the meltdown moment can actually be stopped. And an intuitive application, and these all can actually be packaged in a mobile app, okay, which can then be used by the school staff and parents, carers, with a dashboard to give accessible visual feedback on these issues, okay? So this is the main things which we would like to achieve. However, these things have been categorized into different outputs. So The first one is actually an online searchable database where all this information related to these situations will be collected. Okay, and then we would have a mobile engagement and meltdown measurement app. Okay, so this is something which will then be contained in a mobile app, and we will then have an autism engagement and meltdown detection framework, and we will try to optimize that particular framework. We'll have a handbook for the teachers and the parents, and finally an pedagogical framework for students with autism, that which kind of things would be better suiting them or not. So as the heart of this is actually building the AI tool, so in the following few slides, I'm going to very briefly touch upon that what has been done in terms of detecting autism, let's say detecting autism using a number of different sensorial or type of physiological and other type of data, and what are the different algorithms which have been applied to do that particular task, and how do these let's say algorithms compare, and what novelty or which kind of approach would we adhere to actually prevent or to detect rumble stages or meltdown to prevent the meltdown. Okay, so as of now, we have started with these outputs, except number 3. Well, we are all proceeding in line with the timeline that were being proposed. So we have collected some information. We are working on the searchable database creation. We are working on developing or selecting the tools or algorithms that are necessary to build the mobile app. Okay, and then at the same time, we are also working on creating the pedagogical framework. So as a part of the second task, which contains the technical part. So here in this, the AI-driven algorithms, we are selecting now the AI-driven algorithms to recognize whether a student with autism spectral condition is engaged using unlabeled sensor data in the future. So what we plan to do as a part of this is to realize this is that we'll have a number of different sensors which will be placed in different parts of the classroom, as well as which we will have let's say through the different sensors like wearable devices. We will collect some data from the students, and these would be like unlabeled, so that we will build this algorithm which will be trained on the labeled data to predict the unlabeled sensor data in the future, so that will the status of the students situation can be predicted in real time. And then well, we'll have also a tool which would then allow parents and the carers who actually know the child in greater detail will be able to provide let's say indications that which kind of situations or which situations would indicate a rumble stage for that particular child. So this is something which would then allow the machine learning algorithm to predict or to predict in a personalized fashion, to perform a personalized prediction of the meltdown or the rumble event. And this is something which will be fine-tuned with a core artificial intelligence-based engine for the inference of engagement and to predict those meltdown events. So we'll have the different sensor data, and then we'll have the different labeling where the parents and the carers would say that, yes, this is something which I think is rumble moment, or this is something which might lead to a meltdown. So we'll train the model, the artificial intelligence model, with this kind of information so that it can actually predict in a personalized way the meltdown event in students in the future. Okay, and at the end we'll have the teacher parent facing dashboard, which would allow them to monitor the student over time. Okay, Now, there are a number of approaches which have been taken. For example, one of the approaches, which is known as decision tree, has been employed in understanding autism stereotype behaviors, okay, using smartwatch. And then there are other approaches, for example, using recurrent neural network based method, which are like deep learning based method, okay. So they applied these deep learning methods on facial geometric features. So on the facial data to understand whether someone is leading or going to meltdown or not. And then we have other methods, for example, using motor movement. Okay, so in case of motor movement data, they actually applied some sort of deep learning technique, which is again convolutional neural network or let's say long short-term memory-based recurrent neural network-based methods, which have been applied to predict autism spectral disorder and then movement. They detected the movement. And then there are other methods, for example, recurrent convolutional neural network-based methods, which also being applied on images to actually understand meltdown in autistic children. Now, the difficulty is that all of these are trying to predict which takes into consideration an individual type of data, okay? However, if we want to have a system which is much more robust and which can allow us to explain that why and how this particular situation is being predicted, okay? So we need something which is much more capable of using or which is capable of using different type of sensor data to do this prediction. And well, in this particular case, there are a number of different algorithms which have been applied. For example, the latent direct allocation or LDA method have been applied to let's say detect autism, and then it has got an accuracy of 58%, over 58%. Then there are multinomial naive Bayes, there are support vector machine, latent semantic analysis, random forest, and many different algorithms. So the bottom line is being that the naive Bayes achieves an 87% of accuracy. However, well, all these algorithms which have here does not actually allow a comprehensive understanding of the situation, because they do not consider all the different types of data. So to do that, well, through this AI Top project, we aim to use or combine different types of sensors, which could be the sensor strap, which could be the patches, which could be the eye gaze tracker, the smartwatch, the wristband, interaction with the robots, all these different kind of sensors. The data will be collected from there, and then these different kind of sensor would be then these multimodal data sets would be then let's say fused together to have a complete overarching understanding about the scenario and the physical health of the child. And then this is something which would then be used in creating some sort of multimodal learning method, which will be supported by deep learning and new advanced machine learning methods, okay, which can also be implemented on a portable device like a mobile device to predict meltdown for the students in the classroom. So this is something which is just an overall idea of what is this what we are aiming to achieve in this AI Top project, and this is something which is the core component of the project, where I just briefly try to touch upon the technical part. So due to the short of the time, we'll not go into the other ones. So I would like to stop here, and then if there are any questions, I would be very happy to answer them. Thank you very much, Karel, again for this opportunity to share this information with the attendees.
Thank you very much, Mufti, for this thorough presentation. Maybe to highlight here, Mufti has addressed during his presentation that it's important that the measurements that will be done with the students, there are diverse ways of measuring this. And the question is, of course, what are we going to use? So it's actually very good that is in this project, all the partners have agreed that in the months to come, they are going to interview both teachers and parents, and where possible also talk with children with autism, to identify also how does the rumble occur, what do you do, what is the measure they take, but also what are the types of devices that they would tolerate to make measurements, because this is something very important, because as a project you want to be non-intrusive. You don't want to create more stress to a student with autism. So thank you once again very much, Mufti, for your very nice presentation. I don't see any questions in the chat session, so it means you're very clear and to the point. Last but not least, I will introduce a good friend of mine. That is Professor David Brown. I may say he's an expert in inclusive gaming, gamification, inclusive education. We've been working together for the past 15, 16 years, I think. And he's going to introduce the Project Diversasia. Now, the Project Diversasia is, on the one hand, taking stock of what we have done in Europe in the past 20 years, let's say, and also seeing how we can share this with partners in Asia, and more specifically in India and Bangladesh. So that's the project that Professor Brown will introduce, and I found here a very lovely picture of Professor Brown. So he's Professor of Interactive Systems for Social Inclusion at the Nottingham Trent University, and also specifically at the School of Science and Technology. So Professor Brown, you have the floor or the screen.
Thank you, Carl.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen.
F5 should do the trick.
Okay, so hopefully you can share my screen. You can see my screen.
Yeah, perfect.
Super. So today, thank you, Mufti, for that excellent presentation. I really enjoyed that. As project leader, I learned a lot there. So now we're going to be talking about the Diverse Asia project, embracing diversity in Asia through the adoption of inclusive and open practices. So this is an Erasmus Plus, a K2 project, Cooperation for Innovation and the Exchange of Good Practices, and it's specifically capacity building in higher education. It's a 3-year project, lasting from we started at the beginning in January this year, and we have another 3 years. So we're roughly about a third of the way through the project, doing the preparation and development of the project in order to transfer best practices in accessibility and also in using artificial intelligence and machine learning to personalize education for people with learning difference. So what do we know about the situation in terms of access to higher education in India and Bangladesh? So we know that disabled students have limited access to higher education in India and Bangladesh. And this project aims to tackle this issue by making accessible higher education, open educational resources, and massively open online courses to make them much more accessible and to personalize education using disruptive technologies such as AI. So we can use sensor data when students interact with digital learning materials. We can look at their eye gaze, their body posture, their speech, and combine that with machine learning to understand how engaged students are. And if they're bored or frustrated, we can change the learning intervention. We can increase the level of challenge, or we can have an inclusive checklist of educational approaches to re-engage students so that all learning is personalized and applicable and useful to people with learning difference. So within the Diverse Asia project, we're aiming to build capacity of 2 higher education institutions in India and Bangladesh, really to integrate students with learning differences, using know-how and an inclusive educational toolkit developed by experienced inclusive education experts in the UK, in Belgium, Bulgaria, Latvia, Serbia, and Turkey. So just looking specifically at our partners, and we are the coordinators in terms of Nottingham Trent. We have 2 Indian higher educational institutions, the Bhanaswar and the Vellore Institute of Technology. In Bangladesh, we have BUET, which is a Bangladesh University of Engineering Technology, and JU University in Bangladesh. We have Gazi University in Turkey, and the University of Latvia. In Serbia, we have SoftQNR, who are a software development company. In Bulgaria, well, you've all met Petya today from NAHU, and you've all met Silva as well from the Plovdiv University, and also PhoenixKM from Belgium. So what will we do in order to promote the access to higher education for people with learning difference, but also including people who face social economic challenges and perhaps whose inclusion in higher education is challenged by their gender? So we have provision of a compendium of inclusive and personalized education guidelines together with a validation toolkit. So that means that we can use the validation toolkit to look at the accessibility, the current accessibility of open education resources and massive open online courses, and to make recommendations for the further improvement of their accessibility. We're also looking at the potential of disruptive technologies from our previous work in the Mathes's project, H2020, in Pathway Plus, Erasmus project, in the current AI Top project. And as Matt Mufti's just very presented in a very clear fashion, we can use sensor data, eye gaze, body posture, facial features, all gained from sensors such as the camera on this device, combined with machine learning, and we can understand when students are interacting with digital learning materials, whether they're engaged, bored, or frustrated. And if we sense something like boredom or frustration, then we can automatically, or via human selection, change the level of challenge, to change the type of learning material to re-engage students, because we know that engagement is the single best predictor of deep learning. So we want to maximize and optimize engagement. All of this will promote the inclusion of students with a range of learning differences. We're building on past project. We had an engagement app that we developed in the Pathway Plus project, and a what's next approach. So when our app detects boredom or frustration, we have a what's next approach, which is a handbook which suggests alternative inclusive educational approaches from an educational checklist of inclusive approaches, which really can engage, re-engage students, trying out different approaches, such as gaming, such as experiential learning. All of the best practices in terms of accessibility or inclusive education, or in terms of AI for personalization, will be transferred from the partners, European partners in UK, Bulgaria, Latvia, Turkey, and Belgium. So what do we know? Needs analysis. Indian and Bangladesh national reports highlight the issue of exclusion in terms of women and economically disadvantaged students. So we know the Access India initiative is doing a lot to address these issues, but a lot remains to be done, and there are still our challenges. There is non-compliance in terms with access to higher education for students with disabilities. The Supreme Court of India directive has stated that 5% of all university places should be saved, should be reserved for people with disabilities, and that all facilities should be accessible. However, there is still a long way to go, and even the most prestigious universities in these countries still aren't complying with the Act. There is limited current access to online materials and media for students with disabilities. So for instance, we know only a small number of higher education websites meet the minimum standards in terms of accessibility. If we have open access and if we have open educational resources, we can go a long way to providing and promoting inclusion of students with learning difference in these countries. But even where there is good provision of facilities, digital literacy remains low amongst teachers and students in Bangladesh. So with lower uptake in terms of digital resources, in terms of learning and teaching, we still have faced major barriers to inclusion in these countries. So in response to these challenges, what do we aim to do? Really, our primary aim is to ensure students with disabilities can enjoy the same access to higher education in India and Bangladesh as their typically developing partners, and enjoy access to accessible open education resources and MOOCs. We really aim to build the capacities and resources of Indian and Bangladesh higher education establishments in order to include a diversity of students, including those with learning difference. And we're really trying to provide inclusive education training and tools to staff as well, so that they can understand and be trained in methods of inclusive education in order to include these students in their provision. It includes a validation guidelines toolkit that allows higher education staff to understand the current level of accessibility of their digital resources and make suggestions to improve the accessibility. But also we want to make sure that all the networks in these countries are aware of these innovations and promote them through their country networks. So in all these projects, you've heard this time and time again today, we have a series of work packages which adopt a waterfall method, but primarily these are the results. We have a very innovative toolkit transferred via the European partners with guidelines, checklists, and leading edge practices, including a validation toolkit. This includes a set of guidelines that define the steps needed to provide inclusive education from the registration of the person with learning difference to the actual participation in the classroom. We develop guidelines towards producing very accessible open educational resources and MOOCs and inclusive pedagogical approaches. These include courses and materials and related curricula that can be used to prepare staff themselves to provide inclusive education and affordable education for the inclusion of those from socially, economically deprived situations. We also have an online database with guidelines and associated leading edge practices, and they can be consulted based on disability, type of disability, teaching content format, if it's video, audio, or written type of learning materials, and the type of training. Is it a lecture theatre? Is it a seminar, workshop, or is it experiential learning? But we will further transfer our engagement app. We already have these approaches based on sensor data. When students are interacting with learning materials, we can understand via that sensor data if they're engaged or not, bored or frustrated, and we can provide personalized learning plans. We can understand what really best engages a range of students with learning difference to understand what works for them individually to promote their inclusion. And all of this, one of the main barriers to the adoption of any type of innovative technology like this is to ensure that the teachers themselves have the skills and the necessary training to use these technologies. And there you go, that's what we're doing. So, I think I'm at the end of my presentation. We have a range of social media channels here. for the Diverse Asia project. If you need any further information, do please contact me as project leader, David Brown. Thank you for listening today.
Thank you very much, David, for this thorough explanation of the Diverse Asia project. As we have seen in the various presentations, we first explained the work that is still ongoing in Europe, where there's still a lot of spread needed in terms of spreading good practice related to inclusive education. But then we also see that we can share this with other communities, with other countries, even outside Europe, and that's where obviously Diverse Asia comes in. Okay, is there anyone who wants to ask a question to Professor David Brown before we close the session? No? Okay, then I have a couple of practicalities to announce. First of all, each and one of you that have participated online will receive a digital certificate via email. So we'll use the email that you have used for your registration. And this is a certificate that proves that you have participated in it. A feedback survey will also send to you because we would like to know what you thought of each of the presentations, how maybe we can improve things, because we also plan to have another event of this project taking place in January 2022. So it will be good that we have some feedback from you. And then all the presentations, as well as all video recordings, will be made available online very shortly. And once again, you will receive that in an email. So you don't need to look for it. We will make sure you get it in your mailbox, and then you can access the presentations or rewatch the video or share it with your colleagues. So that brings us to the end of this event. I would like to thank all the presenters for taking the time to prepare themselves for this event, and also all the participants for taking the time to participate. So without further ado, I wish you all a nice evening, and we look forward to welcome you in future to one of our next online or maybe physical events. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye. Have a nice night.